So please welcome to the podium for the first time, Gray Jones.
Hey, everybody. Okay. Well, just a little about me. I've I've just finished my 196th TV episode. Worked mostly with Avid in the last few years, but I have done a lot of Final Cut and a little bit of Premiere. I'm pretty much agnostic that way. I agree. You spend a night with a manual and the next day away you go. At least that's the way we should be. But one of the things that I love about Boris FX is that it supports a whole pile of different programs, and more are coming. Final Cut will be coming, Final Cut X anyway. And the great thing about Boris is that it's the same no matter what application you're in. So it's not this situation where you have to learn all of the myriad of effects in Final Cut Pro, and then all of a sudden you jump over to Avid and you don't know anything. If you get used to using the Boris effects, you can hop from one to the other and even translate presets between them. So if you build an effect on your own, you can transfer it into another application and use the exact same effect in the other place. With BCC 9, they've spent 2 years engineering a massive, massive overhaul of the software. Going right under the hood, they now work with not just OpenGL for acceleration, they now work with OpenCL and CUDA, depending on the graphics card you have, to greatly increase the speed of the effects. There's a great new help engine that's really, really fast, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm excited to show you today. One of them, probably the biggest new feature is the FX browser, and I'll show you a little bit about how it works. Let me apply one of the new filters, film style, two-strip color. If anybody remembers Technicolor films like Wizard of Oz and that kind of thing, well, this plugin imitates that effect. And when I apply it here, even just the default is kind of fun. With this footage, we want to make it look like it was maybe the King and I kind of time. But we've always had presets that we can browse, and you can go through the various presets of this filter by going next or previous. You can maybe dig down, and if you remember the name of a certain one, you can jump to that. But what Boris has brought in is something new called the FX browser. You open up the FX browser, and it gives you a visual indication of all of these presets. So you can jump immediately, say you want it to be golden or you want it to be a little more blue. You can visually see what you're doing. And the cool thing is it's an interface that you can customize. If you want a bigger image here, if you want to compare side by side with the original, you can compare side by side. And there's a history. Say, for instance, you've been punching around a whole bunch of things. You saw one you liked, but then you moved on to a couple other ones. Well, you've got a history of the ones that you've been browsing. You can search, say, for instance, if you want to know which presets have blue in the title, or it records previous searches that you've done. And so find one you like, maybe browse, and I don't know, this magic pink. Let's apply that one. And so now that magic pink is applied here. You could then, from that point, you can customize further. And like I said before, you can save a preset that you can actually read in Adobe Premiere and load the exact same plugin on the other side. Another new filter in BCC 9 is BCC Vignette. I'm going to option double-click this one to apply it. Now, we've had different ways of doing vignettes in the past that were all really cumbersome. If anybody remembers having to draw a mask and feather it to try to get that look, and then good luck trying to customize that. Well, this new vignette is awesome. Brings everything into one place. And you've got a number of different options. Of course, you've got the traditional color vignette. Then you can also apply a blur vignette. And you can apply a blur plus color. And when you do that, you can actually work these independently so that you've got an offset control where you can have a different radius for the blur than from the outside vignette. So just a lot of control over the vignettes. I should mention, if you're in Premiere, one thing I love about Avid is you can apply one filter across a number of clips. In Premiere, you've got the same filters, but because the adjustment layers aren't working too well, just apply to one clip and then copy and paste the attributes to the other ones. Hopefully, they'll be fixing the adjustment layers soon. But back to BCC 9, that's the FX browser. And one great use of the FX browser, actually, is not just for browsing presets, but if you want to define, let me just kill this effect, and say we didn't know what effect we wanted to do on this clip. Well, I can now go to the FX browser and apply that as a filter and open up the FX browser. But now when I do this, it not only gives me the presets, but I can drop down any of these categories and not just see what that effect will look like, but all of the presets for that effect all at once. So for trying to find a particular effect, it is so fast. Transitions have had a major overhaul. There's 20 new transitions, and it's not just ones that aren't that important. I know how many times have we done a swish pan where you've razored on top and you layer a bunch of effects. First you do a push from left to right, and then you ramp a blur on top of it to get that swish pan. Well, now you have a swish pan, and you just drop on a certain effect. Dissolve. And drop this on here. And now, this gives us if you look here, these visual controls on the screen, rather than digging through the text on the left, you can visually change a whole bunch of different things about the effect. Say, for instance, if I want to adjust the length of the dissolve that's underneath this lens flare, I can adjust it just by dragging this control. If I want to ease, I can ease the length of the actual spike in the middle. And there's Bezier handles on a whole bunch of different aspects of it. And so you can really quickly get exactly the effect that you want. The start and the end, say for instance, if I want to have it horizontal, just drag the start and the end. And now that lens flare goes from side to side, which actually for this clip works really well because the outgoing shot is already moving, and so it hides that edit really well. I'm going to jump on over and apply another new one, which is the Composite Dissolve. We've all used about 1 billion dissolves in our lifetime, and we've all seen 1 billion dissolves in our lifetime, and they're great. They serve a purpose, but they're kind of boring. And with the Composite Dissolve, what it does is it uses blend modes to make the dissolve. And so I can change these blend modes, say for instance from hard light, I can change that down to maybe lightness. Let's see, lightness down here, and make a completely different look to the dissolve. There's input black, input white controls that I can use to customize everything about it, all without having to do any kind of keyframing or layering of different effects. So that is pretty cool. I was telling you about a swish pan before, and here we go. No razoring or layering, and you've got all of those same graphic controls. So if you want to ease any part of this, one quirk with Premiere, you got to make sure that the effect is selected and you've got this HUD on before you can customize these values. But I love being able to actually look at the image and do it this way rather than tweaking the visual I mean, sorry, the text controls on the side. Another really cool one is Damage TV. Now, there's been a ton of different Damage TV filters over the years. They're all very render intensive. And this one, at least on Avid, on Premiere, on this particular laptop, isn't going to be real time. But on Avid, they're green dot effects. So all of these play in real time. But this Damage TV is very customizable. You can affect the roll, you can affect the scan lines, all the things you might expect. Sometimes we've had to layer a few of these together. One of the things I love about BCC 9, for a lot of these effects, they think of anything you might want to customize in that, and they pack it all in one filter instead of making you layer different filters together. Let me check on Avid and see if it's happy. Let's just see if we can close out of there. Okay, so I'm going to hop back to Avid now. And go back to the transitions, and then the last one that I wanted to show is the Flutter Cut. The Flutter Cut is something you may have seen before. Really, really hard to build manually. Often with these types of transitions, they involve. I mean, I remember doing these on film even, and having to splice individual frames together with a negative and make these fun kinds of things. But there's tons of things you can customize in here. If you want a flash in the middle of it, you've got outgoing clip settings, incoming clip settings. You can say if you want to invert the outgoing clip, then all of a sudden, bang, you've got an inversion in there. And so it's just some really, really neat filters, and I would urge you go to borisfx.com. They've actually got a great browser on their website where they call it a filter gallery, where you can actually see a visual representation of every single one of their over 200 effects, and so you can immediately see what it looks like. As well, I did mention that there's a great help system now. Okay, here's the help system. It's all HTML based, so it's really, really easy to browse and see instructions for all of the filters. And I'm going to jump over into image restoration. Now, how many of us have worked with GoPro cameras or similar action cameras, wide-angle lenses that distort everything? And we're used to those distortions to a certain amount, but often we actually want to intercut with regular footage, and it can be really jarring to all of a sudden go to super distorted footage. If you look at the top of these columns here, they're all bending inward like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, except it's all straight that way. And so I can apply a lens correction to that straightens it all up. And boom, all of a sudden it's a completely different shot. I mean, if we play without that correction, your eye is drawn upward to the top of the frame just because our eyes are naturally drawn to what doesn't look right. Our eyes kind of know what something should look like. When you put the lens correction on, and I play the same clip, you actually notice the detail of the scene. It becomes a real shot. Now you can't see this too well, but one of the things that happens when you add any kind of lens correction or optical stabilizing, or if you're even just zooming in on something to fix a mic that's in the shot or something like that, you end up softening the shot. And there's a brand new filter called Magic Sharp that you can put on the image that really does an amazing job. Unfortunately, this particular projector, you can't see it terribly well, but it does a really, really good job of bringing back the sharpness in shots that you've corrected, or if something's just a little bit out of focus. Can't work miracles exactly, but if it's a little bit out of focus, it can do a great job bringing back the sharpness. So that's a very, very cool feature. Another thing that we do a lot as editors is green screen. And if I were to rank the percentage of green screen that was shot correctly versus the green screen that was not, that I have to deal with, one show I had to do over 300 green screen shots. And oh boy, would I have loved to have taught them at the beginning how to shoot a green screen. In Avid, or sorry, in BCC 9, there's a new plugin called Chroma Key Studio that basically integrates anything you might want to do in terms of green screen. It integrates the matte choker. It integrates, well, let me just show you. The first thing, I'm going to bypass the filter itself to do one quick thing, and you're going to love this, and that is going to turn the outside mask shape to spline mask, turn on splines, and with BCC 9, you can actually draw Bezier curves right on the image. This is an incredible speed enhancement. You don't have to jump out to After Effects to do your key, and you don't have to do a complicated mask another way. You've got it right there. And so I'm going to switch to our Chroma Key matte and see how our matte is. Oh, actually, sorry. Before I do that, select my blue. And you notice with this particular key, it's not a great blue, but I'll pick something somewhere in the middle and then turn off my splines and go back to the Chroma Key matte. It actually does not too bad a job. Clean up that matte a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that one on the floor because we'll see. We can use it as a shadow later on. So go back to my final composite. And let me just zoom in a little bit. And you can see on his arm here that there's still a little bit of garbage. So I'm going to go down to the matte choker that's right in the filter. It goes a little too far, blurs a little too much. So let's tweak these settings a little bit, give it maybe a blur of 1, and then crank up softening till it gets just right. Another thing that's built in is light wrap. What light wrap will do is it'll actually wrap some of the color spilling from the background, basically creating a spill that that mimics the way that light would actually fall on you. And it does a great job of hiding if you've had to soften too far. It makes it look like it actually was supposed to be there, which is really, really cool. So that's actually not too bad. Now, of course, he doesn't look like he's in that setting, and you want to apply some color correction at this point. There's a little bit of color correction in BCC Chroma Key Studio. If you want to do something simple, like pull out a bit of saturation or change the brightness a little bit, you can do that. You've got a total hue control. That's not going to go all the way that we want. So I'm going to apply a color balance to it. Now, really, really important is that when I apply this color balance, it applies it to the whole shot. And so if I'm going to be wanting to apply color balance just to the part that I've keyed, it's very important that I control the stacking. So if I go to the title matte, I want the first, or for the color balance that I just applied to be the multi-filter end, and I want the Chroma Key Studio to be the multi-filter start, and that applies the color just to the part that I've keyed. If you have more than two that you're stacking together, everything in the middle will be multi-filter mid, and then you just need to make sure to indicate which one will be the start and which one will be the end, which is a massive improvement over previous versions. I remember debating for ages how to get something happening in the stacking and just couldn't do it in Avid. Had to go to another application and then bring it back into Avid. So now we actually have some great stacking available. I don't have time to show you, but you can go a little further with this and add a flicker to it, add a little, with a DVE, you can add a reflection, just basically copy copy that clip, add a BCC DVE to it, and then pull it around, and you can create a nice little key right from Avid, and it's looking pretty good. Gonna jump over to Laser Beam, and Grunge. Now, Grunge is a really, really cool new filter. And I'm going to illustrate Grunge as a transition, even though it's not technically a transition, but I'm going to show how you could make it a transition. So I'm going to razor here and apply a BCC Grunge. And you can see it creates some really, really nice grungy effects. This is one I pre-built just for time. But again, you've got tons of stuff that you can customize. You can customize how much shake, how much flicker. You can add chromatic aberration. And all you need to do to make it a transition is just animate the blend with original on and off. And boom, you've made a transition out of it. And this, when you think about what it's doing all at the same time, to be a green dot effect is awesome. There's also a pile of different textures available if you really want to dig down. You can change. There's a bunch of high resolution textures, and when you enable it, it's not a green dot effect anymore because these are so high resolution. When you think laser beam, if any of us have used the After Effects laser beam, which looks a little bit like a lightsaber and is really neat to play with as a lightsaber, this goes a lot further than that. I mean, look at the quality of the laser beam, the smoke, and just the organic nature of it. And so it's great for even something like a lower third. You got some lower third text that's not very exciting. Throw a laser beam underneath it. You can colorize it however you want. And boom, you've got a graphical element. There's tons of other things you can do if you want to track any of the. I've seen right on text where you track this laser beam with it, and it looks fantastic. That's almost all the time we have, but I do want to mention that the pan and zoom, which we use heavily in Avid, but it's always been a 2D effect, is now a 3D effect in BCC 9. And the nice thing about it is it adds actual motion blur, crop, vignette, all of that inside the tool, so that you don't have to layer anything on top of it and fake motion blur or anything like that. It's all built in. And like I did say before, the acceleration with OpenCL and CUDA is actually almost, well, it depends on the filter. It's between 10% faster and 100% faster. Some of the filters are really optimized for OpenCL and are literally more than twice as fast in this new version. But it's over 200. I think it's close to 230 filters now, and it really is a one-stop shop for virtually everything you want to do. If you've got the one that's bundled with Symphony, like a lot of us do, the BCC 8, there's huge improvements in BCC 9, and it's definitely worth a look.